I did my all fairness team too today.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, because of the 200th win coming up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cut that out. Record. Hello there, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. I am Rob Howe, joined as always by Scott Docterman from The Athletic. We are recording on Thursday, September the 7th, a little after 9 a.m. Central Time. Anything going on this week, Scott, in the state?
Yeah, just another horse latitudes week, Rob. I
love the interviews where we get it's just another game.
Yeah,
we just got to approach it like another game.
Yeah, that's it's kind of like, okay, come on, we're doing this do-si-do. We know, you know.
We know that's not what's being said inside of the building, so don't try pushing that outside the building.
Yeah. Although I will say that they seem to be more open now about that than they were 10, 15 years ago, where they were really married to the cliches and stuff, where, you know, except for Julian Vandervelde.
Fred Barr.
And Fred Barr, yeah. They were the only two that really, they strayed outside the lines. And then Julian Vandervelde got us banned from freshman for almost 15 years. So.
I remember talking to Fred about when he said it before 02. And we obviously know what happened after that, and in that game. And I talked to him, years later about it. And Fred's doing well health-wise too, which is good to hear. But and he was like, "Yeah, I had the meeting with coach, and he talked to me about what to say and things like that." He goes, "But it's how I felt, and we know that's how they feel. They don't like each other."
Right. I still have videos that I'll probably post today of last year, pregame and postgame. And pregame, you had Iowa State's offensive linemen who were not only walking on Iowa's sideline, they were inside the sideline of Iowa's sideline before the game, walking right into their players and everything, like, we're here, we're announcing our presence. And then you look at the end of the game when they ran into the end zone, the tunnel area where Iowa comes out of, and was just giving it to the fans, or a lot of war of words. So this isn't just another game, for the players. A lot of fans we know, and I think they're a vocal minority in this state, Rob, want this series to end in the worst way. But the majority want to keep it. And if you ask the players, this is the team that they want to beat probably more than any other.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Tory Taylor, a kid from Australia who never went to American football game until he came here to play, saying this is his favorite game. I mean, that's telling. And I think we have to do the dance of, do we have to play them every year? Can we sprinkle in another non-conference opponent? It would be dumb. I've said it before, and I don't want us to go down this road and into these weeds again with whether or not this rivalry should continue every year. It should, in my opinion, and I know people disagree with that, and that's fine. And it could change with the changing landscape, Scott, with, realignment, expansion, things like that. None of these are safe, but I hope I don't see the end of this series.
Well, it was like a couple of years ago when the alliance was a hot topic for a minute, and there was discussion that, okay, then the Big Ten was going to play either an ACC or a Pac-12 team every year. And so you really want Iowa to go play NC State or Washington State instead of Iowa State. It makes no sense. It absolutely doesn't, in that regard. I mean, you got a trophy game, you got a game that everybody points to. You hate to lose. You love to win. It's in favor of going and playing somebody different. It's one thing if you're going to play Notre Dame or you're going to play Alabama or something like that, or USC. But, by the way, you are going to start playing them, or Oregon and Washington. So I think at some point, this is a game that's must see for the state. You may hate it. I think there are different attitudes about it, and I think that's fine. But I also think that it's just, and this is where Iowa in the state itself, but Iowa fans a lot of times get too narrow in thinking that the rest of the world thinks like them. Now, if Iowa State sucks, if they're 2-10, that's one thing. But if Iowa State's competitive, which it has been really under Matt Campbell, then it's not about, oh, we shouldn't be, we're too big to play Iowa State. It's outside. It's like, why do you think you're too big to play Iowa State? That's really more the attitude. So I think in some respects is kind of check yourself a little bit.
All right. And history doesn't dictate the future always. But if you go back now, we have, this is the 25th sample size with Kirk Ferentz. Think about the non-conference games. You were, to your point, Scott, think about the non-conference games Iowa's played in that time and where Iowa State the Iowa State game ranks against, with those other games, whether it be Pitt or Syracuse or with the Arizonas, would you rather play those schools than Iowa State? I mean, ask yourself that. Is that more exciting to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, and Kirk is 13-11 against Iowa State. And I know the argument then will be, because it's Iowa State's Super Bowl. But that's not entirely true, because I think you look at Iowa State's record over that 25 year period. Actually, I think he's 12-11 or something like that, because they didn't play 1 year. But anyway,
13-10, I think it is.
13-10. Okay, there it is, because they're 13-11 since they actually beat Hayden in his last year. So he's 13-10. But if you look at all those other teams, Iowa State's record has got to be comparable to Pitt, to Syracuse, to Arizona State over that time period.
And maybe better than some of them.
Yeah. And it's been a quality program, and especially under Matt Campbell. If you want to go back and talk about the Paul Rhodes era and Gene Chizik and even McCarney towards the end, okay, you got valid points. And of course, if you go before McCarney, then it was kind of a JV program to an extent, but this is a Power 5 conference team. They're not going out of a Power 5 conference now. We've seen what the Big 12 conquered the Pac-12. So I think you almost got to accept it as this is a major opponent you're playing every year for a trophy in a game. All eyes are on the state are on, and you're looking at, when we go to these games, Rob, there's an estimated between 20 and 30,000 more fans who just show up, who go and hang. A lot of times it's, students. A lot of times, hey, we went to high school together at Ankeny or Dowling or Water, Cedar Falls or something like that. And then, some of them go to Iowa State, some of them go to Iowa, some don't go to either. And then they all get together and hang out and party for the weekend. I mean, it's a big deal. And then you look at all the viewing parties around the state, and, in central Iowa, it's mixed, and eastern Iowa, it's certainly heavier for black and gold. So it's really a big, impactful event. And when you take something away, what are you going to replace it with? And if it's just like, something else, that doesn't work. You're going to have to tell me you're going to replace it with something that has a lot of value, because you're losing something with a lot of value.
Yes, I think we walked through a large number of that 20,000 extra folks from our parking spot to the stadium. They take us through. They give us a nice tour through the Iowa State tailgating folks setups. So it smells great. It's a little bit of a challenge, but it all comes with the territory. Let's just briefly look back, Scott, a little bit at Utah State, or just some storylines there, maybe even more so, to get us ready for this week. Obviously, we kind of had heard this going into the game, that there could be some other casualties from the gambling investigation in terms of being available for that game. We don't know specifically, haven't been told specifically, other than Noah Shannon publicly named. But there were guys missing that were there, but, involved but not dressed. Jamari Harris, Chris Reams. So that was impacted. And I think, you look at how, Iowa's defense without, those two projected starters in Jamari Harris and Noah Shannon, in addition to replacing what Iowa lost on defense. And, you don't want to make excuses for what happened on Saturday, but you couple that with, and Iowa gave up, didn't give up a touchdown to the last minute against. And I thought the defense was that was classic bend but don't break Iowa defense, where, we're going to, we're giving up some yards here, but we're not going to let you into the end zone. And just to build on that, Scott, I'd like your opinion on this. I heard Kirk say this. I heard some of the players say this, that Utah State new defensive coordinator showed them some looks they weren't anticipating, and that caused them some problems. What say you?
I agree with them. They looked confused at times on the offensive line. I thought they missed a lot of aiming points. I thought they missed a lot of blocks that were makeable blocks. So it was really like, what are you guys doing out here? And I think they're thinking too much and reacting too little, which all goes back to, are they coached well enough, or are they prepared well enough, or are they just they're not sure what they're supposed to do? And I think that's probably a little bit of all three, because, I understand that they went through a lot of different tape of, and Kirk had even brought it up that, I'm watching Bowling Green from last year, trying to figure out what this team's going to do. And, now granted, they didn't have their best player, up front. So they were still pretty depleted. So then in some ways you're kind of like, yeah, but you still should have done better than that offensively. But I liked the way that the passing game kind of came together. I thought they were able to hit some big plays down the field that they really didn't do very much of. I think what they had 3 of 25 plus yards, and last year they only had 16 total. So that was good to see. And they attempted a few more. And, I thought Cade McNamara handled himself well in the pocket and, made a lot of completions. The running game is the big question mark, and that's what everybody's targeting. But in some ways, you kind of rather have it, at least at this point in the season, be the running game rather than the pass block, because, pass block, they seem to set the line that they need to, and kept him pretty much upright. Got hit a few times, but that happens. And then one mental breakdown gave up the sack by a running back. So overall, offensively, they didn't dominate. And that's what everybody wanted to see, was domination up front. But I think overall that, it's actually not the worst thing in the world, Rob, that they didn't. And here's why, because if they would have went and ran for 220 yards, how overconfident would a lot of Iowa fans be today? And maybe even themselves thinking, we're going to roll over Iowa State. This kind of gives them, a lot of focus thinking ahead. And because this offense is a work in progress, it is not anywhere near where it needs to be. So, I would probably grade the offense at about a C+. Not bad. 3 touchdowns, 3 offensive touchdowns. I mean, it took us what? How long did it take us last year? I mean, it took us to the 3rd game before we got to 3 offensive touchdowns. So overall, I don't think it was a bad day.
First season since 1991 that Iowa scored its first touchdown via the pass, which is stunning. And the first 2 touchdowns being passes, I think, had a lot of people stunned. But those are the glass half full things we saw Saturday, right, Scott? That hey, they can move the ball through the air. He I think completed passes to maybe 9 different players, so spreading the ball around. The running game's a concern. It is. You average 2.4 yards against a team like that. That was what, 105th in scoring defense last year, with 59 new players on their roster, missing one of. I get it. They're showing you things you haven't seen before, but you got to adjust better within the game. You got to you got to do something at halftime. You got to adjust. And I don't know if it's the coaching. I don't know if it's the players executing. I'm not sure exactly what it is with only one game of being able to watch. And I've rewatched the game. I know you have. It's little things here and there, but I think it's dangerous to assume that those little things will be fixed, because we've seen them not fixed in the past. I'm not saying they won't be, and I'm optimistic that they will be, but this is a challenge this week, which we'll get into when we talk Iowa State, but this is an Iowa State defense that doesn't give up a lot on the ground. I think Northern Iowa had less than 3 yards per carry. It is Northern Iowa, but still, Iowa State's defense is pretty strong. I wonder, Scott, and this leads me to another point I wanted to make that we talked about before recording. It was uncharacteristic maybe of Kirk to talk about Cade McNamara being compromised with the injury and limiting some of the playbook. And I wonder, smokescreen there, just being honest, how does that impact things? Because obviously if you're a defense and you know the quarterback's not going to run or is limited, it changes how you approach things.
That's why he's got to set a guessing game, Rob, because is he being honest that, hey, this guy's his leg isn't good enough for us to do a quarterback sneak or a bootleg or a rollout pass and scramble out of the pocket and run for a first down? Or is he just throwing it out there and then all of a sudden, oh, he's going to be fine. He's going to go out there and he's going to do his thing and
running RPO all day.
Yeah, right. And so you're like, and maybe in some ways it's kind of like, it's kind of like us if we're starting to look at our NCAA tournament brackets and we start analyzing the 5-12 matchups, Rob, and we're going, oh, well, I guess I could see this if this happens and this happens, and then you don't know. And then, your wife's the one going, oh, I like the name of that team, so we're going to go with there. And then they win, and you
like the mascots.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where, Heacock is probably, his mind is in a figure eight trying to figure out, okay, what does he mean by this? Is he really being truthful, or is he, just poo-pooing it? And then all of a sudden he's going to go out there and do his thing. Well, the one thing with Cade McNamara is he's not exactly like a running quarterback either. At his best athletically, he's probably not quite Brock Purdy. So, which means he can do a lot of the things you ask him to do in the passing game, but don't ask him to go out there and run, 40 yards, and RPO it and stuff. So I think I look at it as him being probably more honest based on what we saw the other day. They were in shotgun a lot more than I expected them to. They didn't do, hardly any play action, didn't do hardly any. I don't think there were any bootlegs or rollouts. If there were, I missed, I'd have to go back.
But I don't remember any either.
Yeah. So to me, I think he's probably being honest. And, when it's 4th and 1 and 4th and a few inches and you don't get it. And in the past, they've been all about just, running their normal stuff, which is a quarterback sneak. You got to question, did his leg injury happen? And that's why he was listed as questionable, Rob. That's why he was questionable the whole time.
Yes, he was. And I was thinking, and this is just me being the armchair quarterback, but put Deacon Hill's ass in there if you've got a quarterback sneak. That big dude, put him in there on a 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Just let him jam it through the line behind Logan Jones and those big guys in the middle. Why not?
Well, the other thing is you can run Wildcat.
Yeah.
You can push
They've
him.
done it.
Yeah. I mean, you could run it with a direct snap where he's not under center. Maybe you can say, get the handoff and take it. You could do that. There's no rules against that. And how great would that be to have a 5 tight end package, Rob? Never in the history of pro football or football has there been a 5 one. There's a 4 now, thanks to Iowa. But, can Eric All take snaps? Or, even if they're, you're in the backfield and taking a snap like a shotgun and running straight ahead, it's certainly possible to take care of that. So I think there are options, there are opportunities, as Seth Anderson said, and I think they got to be careful. Yes, good opportunities. I was cringing for him on that one.
I'm on the free Johnny Jacuzzi bandwagon. Let's get the 5th tight end in there. Go Johnny Jacuzzi, get him in there. 5th tight
end. Yes, he'd be the washback.
Here's my thing on this. I think Kirk is telling us the truth. I don't think that they're not going to call boots and stuff like that with him in this condition. And it's still I would say the self-awareness of the offensive line, good pass blocking in the first game, not good run block. And you said, I mean, if the offense is a work in progress, that starts up front. That group is still a work in progress. So I get the being conservative in play calling in terms of putting Cade at risk. But if it's a 3rd and 4 and they need a first down and he sees a running lane and he doesn't see anybody open, he's going.
Yeah. And you got to do that.
Yeah. I mean, in a game like this, he's going to push it. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he's a football player and he's not going to just stand there like a statue. He's going to take off. Now, you might say, once you get the first down, get down, don't mess around. And that's totally fair. Although if you do see 40 yards of open territory, he's not going to do that either. And
like Beathard.
Right. And I tell you what, there was the series there in 2015 where he went from almost getting a safety to running 40 yards to flipping the ball one time to Jordan Canzeri. And then the really high, hard pass in the end zone to Von Smith was, to me, one of the great series in Iowa history. But especially by a quarterback. And I know that now we're going back 8 years and I just feel really old thinking about that part, But no, if he sees an opening, he's going to take it. And I think in his case, probably the worst possible thing is kind of what happened on Kids Day and why he got hurt in the first place, which is half stepping. Yep. When you're running and you're indecisive, should I go down? Should I keep running? And then you tweak your leg. And then that's what could be the worst part for him. But overall, I think I'm pretty bullish on him, on how he performs with this offense. He's not going to be able to do as much, but they are going against a very good defense. And now their front 6, basically, they run a 3-3-5 stack, but it's also they convert it to a 4-2 a lot. I mean, Will McDonald was not playing outside linebacker as much, when he was there last year. He was playing, stand up or rush end a lot, and sometimes even inside. But I think the big matchup for me with Iowa is, obviously they got to run the football. That if you don't run the football, that really puts them in danger. But I think ultimately,
how much do you run it, Scott? How much do you? Because it's going to be tough sledding. We know that. How committed are you to the run? Are you using that run to set up the pass? Can you use the pass to set up the run? Just some thoughts there from you.
That's a good question, because I think you cannot ignore the run. Even if it's not successful, you still have to do that, because if you go 3 and out a couple of times and you're playing punt ball, you're giving them confidence. And you want to take that away, but you're also you want to play to your strengths and you want to run the ball. That's who you are, and that's how you're going to be successful this year. And you want to prove it to your players and to everybody. So they're going to continue to do that. One thing I remember, a game plan that Brian did that made a lot of sense, didn't have a lot of success, but it made a lot of sense, was against Mississippi State in that Outback Bowl 5 years ago, where Jeffrey Simmons and Marquez Sweat, I think Jonathan Abram were on that defense. They could not run the ball at all. They were dead in the water every play. I mean, that was just such a good defense that they faced. But he had to force them to continue to defend it. He couldn't just say, we're going to pass 3 times in that heat. And what it ended up doing was it forced the strong safety, Jonathan Abram, a first-round flop, but a first-round pick, to bite on it one time on the fake. And then that's what allowed Nick Easley to go past him for a touchdown. And is that possible here? Yeah, it is. You just got to prove that you can do it and stick with it. So now the way they do things, it's unique. The kind of a layman's type of comparison is somewhat with Wisconsin, where they run, kind of a different type of defense, but they tie up blockers at the point of attack. They come from really good angles and they're great tacklers. So you've got all these elements in play for Iowa in the running game that they're going to have to be cognizant of, but they're capable of establishing it. I just saw so many missed blocks, Rob, the other day. I think that's where it starts for me, which is they the blocks were there in a lot of cases, not every case, but a lot of cases.
Why do you think they're not being made? Is it just, you got to think they're being taught in practice? It has to look somewhat better in practice, right? Or they would be more apprehensive to do what they're asking them to do in a game.
They ran a lot of different runs. They ran a lot more counter than they usually do. And they were pulling. And that is unusual for Iowa to do it as much as they do. And for whatever reason, that they would get into their pull and the defender would move, be a little quicker and slide past them. And just they weren't getting to their guy. And so I don't know if it's just they need to be more settled in how they approach that defender, or, they're running too fast and the guy's like, Olay. And then that, I saw some of that, like they're trying to avoid them, kind of like defensive backs see a pulling guard coming their way. They're not taking them on. They're going to get out of the way. Yeah. And that's what I saw, a lot of that. So
I always think about the Robert Gallery block against Illinois, where he just destroyed that poor defensive back. I'm old though, so I remember those are my memories back, like Kirk in that way. I harken back to the early 2000s.
Right. So I don't know. I guess that's what I saw, and again, running a different scheme than they're used to. I don't know if they're trying to hide something, if they're like, hey, we're not going to run as much zone today. We feel like gap is better and counter is better. But I would have preferred them to just say, you know what, we're just going to run our zones and we're going to keep it that way.
It'll be interesting to see if they go back now. Say, okay, we tried it. It didn't work. Let's go back to the bread and butter. And just to build on your point against that Mississippi State game, I think Iowa was confident in that game plan, knowing that its defense wasn't going to give up a lot to Mississippi State. I think it can feel the same way going into this week with a quarterback a redshirt freshman quarterback making the second start of his career, a rebuilt offensive line at Iowa State. I think I wrote this in my preview. This is going to be, I think both teams will have conservative offensive game plans for the most part, field position, punting. It's going to be that sparring, rope-a-dope, let's see who makes a mistake type of thing here, and let the defenses cook, eat, whatever the kids say.
Whatever the kids say these days, right, Rob? Yeah, cook and eat. You know what? And here's the thing. Iowa State benefits more from Iowa's strategy last year than Iowa does from its strategy last year, because as you said, Rocco Becht had an efficient first game.
He did.
He got the ball to the right people. He with a clean pocket, he was pretty decent.
No turnovers.
No turnovers. Yeah, they were 10 of 13, but they also ran the fewest plays in the country.
45?
45 plays.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was an insane amount of plays. And
did you watch the game? Did you rewatch it? Okay. I watched the second half, but I didn't watch the whole game.
Yeah, I watched a lot of the first half, and I kind of, after the halftime, I was kind of like, they really just pulled an Iowa at Purdue type of thing. It was just like, let's just get this game over with. It's hot and not mess around. And I think what you look at with this, Iowa State offense, first, we got to go to Rocco Becht. I think if he can be clean and efficient, get the ball to the tight ends, because they have good tight ends, not great tight ends, not like Iowa, and maybe Jalen Knoll, they'll be effective in moving the ball possibly getting a couple first downs on a possession. I don't have a lot of confidence that Iowa State can mount more than one, maybe two scoring drives. Now, that doesn't count for fumbles or a big kickoff return or an interception or something like that. But if they're getting the ball at their 20, 25-yard line, maybe two possessions where they can score, and maybe one's a touchdown, one's a field goal type of thing. So if Iowa doesn't make any mistakes, if they play the ball the way they need to, they're in great shape, because this offensive line is going to be tested like it hasn't been tested. It's not on paper, it's not very good. They're missing probably their best, if not, maybe one of their best linemen still, in Jake Remsburg, for another 5 games. He did plead guilty yesterday, by the way, but to a lesser charge, like several other players did. But Jalen Knoll's a guy that can hurt you, but he's not Xavier Hutchinson. I mean, they've always had this little smallish receiver that's quick and can do things. And Iowa's always done a pretty good job with that player in this game. And then, the tight ends are nice, but there's no Charlie Kohler. There's no Chase Allen. There's no, Deshaun Hanukkah at this point. So I think Iowa's in that side of the matchup. I feel more strongly that Iowa has a major advantage on defense than even on the other side, where I think Iowa State has the advantage against Iowa's offense.
Yeah, the defenses are definitely the stars of this show. I think it comes down to which offenses can limit mistakes, turnovers, things like that. Can there be an advantage in special teams? We saw that obviously in 2019 over there. Iowa, I guess I lost track. Iowa has not lost over there since the 3 overtime 2011 game. So they've won 5 in a row in Ames. A lot of interesting nuggets like that when I was going through the notes. Both schools, Matt Weitzel, great job with his notes, and whoever helps him over there with that. And same with Iowa State, some real interesting stuff in there. I'd encourage people to check that out. Good for history. You know what, Scott? Now's as good a time as any to take a break, don't you think?
Yeah. We deserve a break today.
Yes. Support for the podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That is sui.org. Systems Unlimited, over 50 years of helping folks in East Central Iowa and helping us here by supporting the podcast, and we appreciate them. As we do, these folks you're going to hear from now, and Scott and I will be back on the other side. Thanks for hanging in there. We're back on the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. Want to let you guys know it's a good week for this because you're feeling your Hawkeye pride. If you're looking to add to your Hawkeye collection, your Hawkeye room at home, the office, something like that, you got to check out Randy Engel's artwork at underthekitchen.square.site. That's underthekitchen.square.site. You can find pieces on some of your favorite Hawkeye players, including Tim Dwight, Spencer Lee, Keegan and Chris Murray. There are others, and they're all available, reasonably priced with certificates of authenticity. That is underthekitchen.square.site, Randy Engel's artwork. Check him out, and you can add to your Hawkeye collection. Scott, wanted to get those ads in early today so we weren't encumbered by that for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah.
So I thought Deshaun Lee did well. He's going to probably get picked on more this week. It's smart to stay away from Cooper DeJean. I definitely back that philosophy. Don't throw at him.
Yeah.
If you're the opponent. So I thought he overall did pretty well. But now the opponents know he's over there. So he's going to have to hold up, but we'll see. I was encouraged.
I was too. I liked what I saw out of him because what I liked was not only, they picked on him, they threw at him, they threw in his direction, they forced him to make plays. And yes, he missed a tackle, an obvious missed tackle, but he came back and really fought back. And that to me is something that you really want to see from a young player is, are you able to put it in your rearview mirror? Are you able to come forward and play hard? And, he had a pick that came back because of an offsides, but then again, they probably wouldn't throw down the field like that if there wasn't an offside. They knew what they had. So, but still, he gave up 4 receptions, I think it was. And, yeah, he's going to get picked on for sure. And this is where the past does come into to present form, which was what, 4 years ago, I think it was DJ Johnson who was out there because Iowa had a slug of injuries. Yep. And Iowa State, threw a wide receiver, pass, and then the wide receiver threw it over his head for a touchdown right away. And that put Iowa behind really early, and Iowa had to climb back to get into it. And I think that's something that, I'm sure they're cognizant of, and, trick plays. And Kirk brought it up kind of unprompted last week, about, yep, we got a new guy. And then over there, they went, and threw it over our heads. And it's like, okay, exactly what's going on. So my expectation is he's being told that time and time again. If you're in this defense, you're automatically got to go with the receiver. But, he was good in run defense too. There was a lot to like. How he performs this week will be really interesting when Jamari Harris comes back next week. Do you go back automatically back to Jamari Harris? Has he earned that job, or is there some kind of question and maybe a competition for that job?
Yeah. Or, I guess you could rotate at corner, but you don't want to get into doing that. It's just not, it gets too wonky doing that. I had some people ask me about the pass rush. 1 sack, I think, on Saturday against Utah State. And obviously without Wagner, who wasn't I don't think a great pass rusher, but he got pressure and he was really good at setting the edge as well and good against the run. But you lose Lucas Van Ness, a disruptor. You wonder where you're going to make up for that. I think Deontay Craig has a bright future. A lot, Aaron Graves had some moments the other day. Joe Evans was a little quiet, but going into that game, Blake Anderson said, we're going to hit them with tempo. We're going to go tempo, try to use our speed, not let their size get to us. And they did well doing that. I think there may be more opportunity this week to get at the quarterback.
It's a more traditional offense. And in Utah State and Blake Anderson, they understand.
He's a good coach, man.
Yeah, he is. He was good at Arkansas State. He's really good at Utah State. They won a league title 2 years ago. I remember, his wife died of cancer a couple of years ago, and, really a tragic situation. And he's done a nice job there. And he understands he can't line it up in this place.
I was just going to say, I enjoyed watching him work on the sideline on Saturday, just kind of how he interacted with his kids and how locked in they were with him. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot to appreciate. I think he understands you cannot slug it out with Iowa at that type of a school. If you try to run up the middle, if you try to, slow your tempo, if you give them an opportunity, the quick passing game, a lot of screens, a lot of flares, a lot of all kinds of different things that enabled get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quick and let your playmakers try to do something. And it didn't always work. Late in the game, they gouged Iowa a little bit, when it was hot, they had some reserves in. And at that point, when it was 24-6, teams kind of let up on the gas, sometimes on defense. And I'm sure that's a teachable moment. But Iowa allowed only 1 touchdown. It was late. It was like 3 minutes to go. Only a couple field goals before that. I don't know what, there are people who think, the defense didn't play that well. And I'm like, I didn't really see it that way. You're going to give up some yards. There's been some angst about Nick Jackson, and I don't agree with that.
I was going to ask you about that because I know I've gotten some of that too. And it's, Jay Higgins throws up 16 tackles. It makes the other linebackers look bad.
Yeah, right. Right, exactly. But, against a team like this, that was the first game I've ever seen. They did not play a single down of 4-3. They played either all cash or dime. And when they were doing that, they got spread out all the time. And so basically he's playing like a safety or a dime back. And that negates what he does well. It's really unfortunate and almost unfair for a linebacker to be put in that position unless you're like Derek Brooks or somebody, and that's why they went to the cash position to begin with, It's because the teams were attacking them this way. And when we got somebody who's getting the ball in their hands and they're trying to throw on the perimeter as often as they did, it doesn't put the weak side linebacker in a position to make a lot of plays. So I don't feel bad at all about the way he played. It's just, that's what happens. Sometimes you get trapped. And then, with Jay Higgins being the middle linebacker, there was a lot of balls in his area. And there were a lot of balls, and he was able to make it happen in the run game. So he didn't get spread out. I thought overall, nothing to worry about this week. As you said, Rob, you're playing against a more traditional offense that uses tight ends, that's got running backs. They want to get downhill. They got an offensive line that they need to run the football effectively to be successful. So you're going to have opportunities to play the way you want to play. They're going to play action fake. They do that, anywhere from a quarter to a third of their plays. And so you're going to have to be cognizant of that, of course, but they play at, the two gap, which is a lateral first step. That's always going to be helpful for them. I don't have any kind of concern about that right now. 2 weeks in Happy Valley, yes, lots of concerns, but we'll know today on Saturday whether or not we should be worried about it or just say it's just a tough team you're playing.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think Iowa State's going to try to, as you said, try to establish the run as Iowa will. It's going to be tough sledding for both. Both teams have good backs, talented backs. Cartavius Norton's a solid back. Abu Sama, the true freshman from Southeast Polk, showed he's got a little wiggle to him in the opener. There's some threats in the passing game as well. And their secondary is really good defensively, Scott. Is that their best unit?
No question. Absolutely it is. Unit. Here we go again, Rob. We're going to make this a weekly bet.
I've been trying since last week. I've tried to get it into my copy as often as I can.
But, Jeremiah Cooper played an awesome game for them. I mean, he was all over the place.
Big 12 defensive player of the week, I think.
2 interceptions, pick 6, but it was to me, it was more his hitting that really caught my attention. I mean, the pick 6 was there. Most defensive backs in that position would have got it. And I was really disappointed with UNI, frankly. I thought UNI played a shit game and they did not look the part. And Theo Day didn't play very well either. And part of that's Iowa State, but part of that's just, I was a little disappointed with the way they played. But Bo Freiler is really good as a safety. TJ Tampa is a top 100 cornerback in the NFL draft coming up. Malik Verdon is good. So they've got a lot of, Jontez Williams is even, a pretty good defender. So they've got 5 defensive backs that this is where the test lies for Iowa's offense. Are there opportunities? And if so, what are they? And how can you exploit them? I think Iowa's tight ends can exploit anybody. You try to match them up with a safety. If you give them an opportunity, they're going to take advantage of it. However, they're not going to give you a lot of opportunities. How is Iowa's wide receiver core, as green as it is and as, untested as it is, going to go up against some pretty good defensive backs? That if they make plays, more power to Seth Anderson, but I haven't seen anything that makes me think that they can handle an elite secondary. And that's what Iowa State is, Iowa is, and Penn State is. So I'm concerned because that is probably the strength of their unit. Up front, I think they've got.
We should have a sound effect for that. Whenever we say unit, bing, some type of bell or something like that. Bing.
It should have like Beavis and Butthead.
That would be good.
He said unit. He said, unit.
We're going to work on that, folks.
Yeah, we'll do that one. But I don't know that they have the other players. Up front, they looked good the other day, but was that because they're playing UNI? Mm-hmm. They lost MJ Anderson. They lost Will McDonald, of course, to your Jets. They've had a lot of linebackers with experience leave lately. What does that mean? Were they, in some respects, they were overrated a little bit. I think, like Mike Rose was a 4-year starter, a really good player, but was he great or was he just kind of there and making a lot of plays? I looked at him as probably more like Seth Anderson than Jack Campbell. Let's put it, or Seth Benson. I'm sorry. Good player, no question, but there's a different level of very, very good. Orion Vance was there forever, but he was always hurt. And, so, how does Sadowski, how does Will McLaughlin, who, Iowa offered early, but kind of gave up on because he was going to go to Iowa State, Zach Lovett, Caleb Bacon had a pretty good game the other day, I thought, 2 sacks. How impactful is he against Iowa? And then up front, losing all 3 of your starters. They played really well against UNI. How do they play against Iowa? That's going to be what Iowa's offensive line can show. I mean, I think they're better, even though they're new players, than what Utah State had the other day. So you're going to have to be, careful with that. And they're going to have a scheme that's going to confuse people. And Iowa's just going to have to come back and play much better.
Yeah, we've seen Iowa struggle with the 3-man front at times through the years. I think it's gotten better at it and become more used to it, seeing Wisconsin and Iowa State play it every year. Not exactly the same formations and defenses, but still 3-man front can be tricky, figuring out where the linebackers are coming from and things like that. But we'll see. It's a really good test, another early test for the Iowa offensive line. It seems like people like to pick out the concerns of the first game of the season, Scott. I don't know. I think we came into this season with Iowa going, all right, offensive line, receiver. Those are the 2, and obviously quarterback, but I think people felt good about what Cade could do because he did it. He's done it before at this level. Offensive line, we've talked about. Receivers, obviously a huge play by Nico. That was a beautiful play. But really leaned on the tight ends. And it's kind of this setup where you have tremendous tight ends. So it's good to get them the ball, but then can you get down the field with the receivers? Can the receivers and the tight ends work together to make your passing attack potent? And that's still what we have to see. And it's only 1 game. So I think overreacting to that is probably premature.
Yeah. And there's some questions here, and they're all fair until the wide receiving core can make plays when it matters. And we've only had 1 game, and it's a small sample size. And
we don't know what would have happened on that Seth Anderson pass had the defensive back not fallen, because that was a beautiful pass. So it changes the complexion, right? If that ball's coming over into his hands in front of a defensive back, you're thinking to yourself, wow, it didn't have the same impact without the guy being there to defend it.
Yeah. And he had him beat, and then he fell. So then it made it, he was so wide open. It's probably one of those where, and he kind of talked about it, where you're like almost nervous. It's like if somebody's there, then you're concentrating on the ball. But when somebody's not there, then your mind starts to wander about things like that. And what was funny was when I had my binoculars out and I was watching it, I saw Cade Weegan take off, and I'm like, touchdown, Weegan. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, touchdown the other way, because the guy fell down, because Weegan was wide open too on the other side. So it was a well-designed route. You got to give the offensive coordinator credit. I know nobody wants to do that, but that's the way it is. And of course the execution was there as well, and can't hurt to have some luck. But the one thing is, when you have 2 NFL tight ends, for sure, and they're tremendous, you use them. We saw that in 2018 with Fant and Hawkinson. They were terrific. Last year, I think back with Sam Laporta, and they had to play him outside at X, for quite a while because they had nobody there. And I'm thinking, man, they just really negated the edge that he has, which is going up against a linebacker in space or a safety, and running pass routes and stuff. And it was really unfortunate for him. But now when you have Eric All and you have Luke Lachey, who are 2 of the 10 best tight ends probably in the country, at least, I feel like you've got to exploit those matchups. But Iowa State knows that too. And that's where they're going to key their safeties on, is we got to keep the tight ends occupied. So that means there's going to be opportunities this week for Seth Anderson, for Deontay Vines, who didn't get any mention except for a false start. He's got to come and do something more. Caleb Brown was okay, but didn't have a catch. Nico had a drop, but it was kind of a tough drop. It was in the end zone. It was kind of over his shoulder. Those are not easy catches. But he also had a beautiful catch and a really nice throw. And one thing I did like about what Cade did was that we hadn't seen for a while, at least since Stanley, with Brandon Smith, is he allowed his receivers to make plays on the ball. And he did that a couple of times. But now you're going against the secondary with NFL dudes. And is that to your advantage? If it's tight end, of course it is. Receiver, I don't know. So I think this is really going to give us a good feel how the receiving core matches up with this team, unless Iowa can run the ball at 6 yards a clip. And if they can do that, then we'll be playing guessing games about the receivers for a little while.
Yeah. And work in progress, as we said, it's not something you would just figure was going to come out of the gate. We've talked a lot about McNamara being out in the spring, missing camp, the chemistry, just the reps playing with each other. It's going to have to happen during the season now. So we waited a while, almost an hour, to get to the elephant in the room, which is the Brian Ferentz-O-meter, coming in at 24 points. That was a game that you were looking at thinking, okay, we can get some cushion here for the point-o-meter. Didn't happen. Now you've gone into week 2 where the sledding's most likely going to be tough, but who knows? They may score special teams defensively. Those count as well. I thought he had I'm bad with grades, Scott, but I think I liked a lot of what I saw there. Just different, again, what they told us in the offseason, blocking aside, the less zone, things like that. That was different. That was probably the most different thing that we saw on offense completely out of anything. But there was some jet sweep action that we saw that worked. I thought the play call where LaShawn Williams dropped the ball that would have been a touchdown was excellent. He stacked receivers on the right. He had everybody else tight a formation. He really sucked Utah State into the box and then swung Williams out to the left. Should have been a touchdown. Excellent play call, excellent formation. There was that, and then they were like, God, man, why are you running the ball there again? With this formation, it's not going to work. But again, it's hard to know exactly how much of it is the execution and missed blocks at times. How much is the play calling? It all ties together. But the bottom line is they scored 24 points.
That is the bottom line, and fans, their fans have used this as kind of a line of demarcation because that's what the contract says. If it didn't say that, then it would just be kind of this, blurred number. Like got to get to there. And when you look at this game, and everybody did, including myself, and you thought, yeah, Iowa should be able to get at least in the 30s, if not a little higher, and score. And they had opportunities to score a couple of times, didn't take advantage of it. And that's both execution and on a little bit on coaching. I thought they left probably at least 7 points, let's say, on the board, if not 11, something like that. Because when they went for it on 4th and 1, and normally that would have been a quarterback sneak, they could have kicked the field goal there. And then when they kicked the field goal at the end of the half, there were 3 drop passes. As you mentioned, the LaShawn Williams one. If he's going to miss plays like that, he's going to be third in my list, because I think Jazz Patterson has a little more upside than he does, and obviously Caleb Johnson does. And then Luke Lachey uncharacteristically dropped a pass in the middle of the field where he would have scored. And Nico did as well. That one I give him, it's still a drop, and I marked him on that, but I give him a little more of a pass because it is a tough catch to make, but that's his route and he's supposed to catch it. So he didn't. So with Brian, I thought overall I would probably, on play calling, I would probably give him a strong B. based on, I thought the passing concepts were really strong. I thought that there wasn't a ton of separation at times, but I thought overall they were pretty good. And the running game, that's a work in progress. And, I think that's probably why I wouldn't give them anything higher than a B. But overall, if they score, even if they win, let's say they win like 17-6, Rob, this week, people are going to say, well, he didn't get to 25. Now he's really in the hole, and they're going to really have to run it up next week against Western Michigan. And
yeah, because then you've got Penn State the following week. And then you get through a third of the season. If you're under that, if you come through the non-conference and then Penn State under that 25, it just feeds the fire.
Yeah. Even though that Northwestern might be the worst team that they'll play on the schedule. Rutgers isn't a whole lot better than them either, but Big Ten teams play you differently, and you've got to be prepared for that. So I think they lost an opportunity, and to kind of put it out of discussionary purposes. If they would have scored 38, then they could have said, all right, hey, we're ahead, move on. But I'll tell you this, Rob, at the very, very end, last play of the game, Utah State went for it, didn't get it. Iowa takes over, 3 seconds left. I see Cooper DeJean go out on the field. And I'm, for a brief second there, it was like, they're going to try a trick play with Cooper DeJean out here. And then it's like, they're going to kneel down the ball. But just that little spark of hope of, he's going in on offense. and can you imagine what that would have done? But Kirk is never going to waver from that. And they would dare, whether it's Beth Getz or whoever, fire me because I missed by 1 point. So I still think it's a long season and a lot of road to go. I don't know. What do you think on this one?
Yeah, I've tried to, as best I can, avoid this conversation, like publicly on social media, things like that. I just don't want to wade into this 25-point game. To me, it's more, does the offense work? Is it better than last year? Is it a threat? Is it, taking a bigger chunk of the responsibility in complementary football? Because I think we saw Saturday, Scott, that maybe this defense ends up being as good as last year, but I think that might be asking a lot when you consider, no more Van Ness, no more Jack Campbell, no more Riley Moss, Kevin Merriweather. I like Xavier a ton. I'm not sure, there's much of a drop off there, but it's different. Seth Benson, just a lot of change there. I think at least early in the season, it's asking a lot for the defense to carry you. The offense has to do more to complement victories. And they did enough on Saturday. Can they do enough this week? Can they do enough at Penn State? Those are going to be the test. To me, that's more important than the 25 points a game. Are you doing enough to help the team win?
Yeah, and if there is one thing that I don't really like about what Kirk Ferentz has brought up several times, and I heard it last night on the radio show too, is like when they didn't get the 4th and 1, and then he talked about, and then the defense went and gave them up a field goal right after that. Sometimes the defense is going to give up plays. Sometimes you can't expect the defense to play perfectly and the offense just to, it's kind of like you treat two people the same. One is an A student and one's a D student. And you can't love them both equally. And it's a false equivalency. And I think, we're not asking, I don't think anybody's asking the offense to play like the defense, because if you are, we'll see in the playoff because the way the defense is played. But I think what you're wanting to see is make the makeables, execute when it's available, score points, and don't put your defense in a bad position. And then your defense will be able to take over from there. And last year they put the defense in the worst possible position, every game. Yeah. And the defense came through. And of all those players they lost, I mean, Lucas Van Ness was an ascending player, and it's really unfortunate. This would have been his big year. Yeah. We would have been like, whoa, this dude's awesome. But then you look at, Benson was really solid. I would say kind of like Jay Higgins, a really good player. Kayvon was a really good player too. And I think Xavier's got more upside, but Kayvon was obviously better at that age, and
Moss had a better feel for the defense. It's just natural. I mean, he was in the defense for whatever it was, 5 years. This is only Xavier's second season.
Exactly. And so you kind of just say, well, he's younger, maybe in next year he'd be an All-American. He might be, but, I think losing Riley is a big loss, no question. But Jack is the one that you just can't replace. He's just the best to ever do it at that position. And everybody knows that. I don't think it's fair to say, hey, this new guy, Nick Jackson, he's the next Jack Campbell. No, it doesn't work that way. Maybe he's the next Anthony Hitchens. I think that's fair, but this defense, you can't expect them to hold teams to 3.99 yards per play. You can't expect them to hold teams to 13 points a game, but 4.3 and 15 and a half. Yeah, they could do that, but it just means you're going to have to get a little bit more out of your offense to win. Not only to do what you did last year, but do more, because last year was terrible. So, I saw enough possibility out of this offense, Rob, to where I think it can do more, but it's going to have to do it. And this weekend's going to be tough. And if they can do it against this defense, I think it shows that, okay, they're capable of doing more this year, but they're going to have to do it. And it's hard to predict that when you haven't seen it.
In offensive football, we know if you follow the game, you build on it as the season goes on. The playbook you get a little deeper into the playbook. You're putting plays on film to set up defenses in different, you can alter what you're doing based on, you show a defense this formation and you run this play out of it, and then you throw them off by running something else out of it. You mentioned just sliding Cooper DeJean into that game at the end, just for that. Those are the type of little nuggets you put in on film to make the opponents think, well, that was different, and things like that. And I think Brian is a smart enough offensive mind to be able to build on week one and continue to build throughout the season. But ultimately, like you and I are in agreement, Scott, the offense has to carry more weight this year than it did last year. Can it do that? Time will tell.
Yeah, time will tell. It's, I'm kind of I think everybody is, certainly, but I'm in prove it mode. Show me you can do it. If you can, then I'll believe you. But, last year it was kind of blind faith. And after the first week, 2 weeks, you're like, oh boy, this is going to be a long year.
And it didn't get better.
No.
I mean, at all. If anything, it got worse.
If there was any improvement, it was minor. And the thing that everybody thinks is, oh, well, they're going to get better as the course of the season. Well, their trajectory was, against another team's trajectory, because other teams don't just stay the same. They get better too. So when you're playing, take your pick out of any team in the league, they're going to get better too for the most part, unless injuries kill them. So that's one thing that, they have to measure themselves against is, can they get better in their fundamentals and their execution and their chemistry? Because that's really where it's going to pay off for this team. I think they're capable of doing it, but I'm not going to predict anything like great dividends with this team right now on offense. Just be better. And if they average 24 points a game, it may sound laughable, but because they didn't get to 25, but it's also a touchdown a game better than last year, which is a major stride.
Yeah, the 25 points a game to me is just not that important. I know it's the contract. And to be clear, they could, go 11-1, not average 25 points. And Brian Ferentz's contract won't be renewed, but it doesn't mean they won't give him another contract.
Right.
It's not how that works. So keep that in mind as well. Last thing here, Scott, before we get into our picks, and I'll throw some gambling information out there on this game as well, the Cyhawk game. But how are we feeling about the rotations on the offensive line?
I do not like it. And it was because I thought that All right, I'll be a little bit honest here. And I think that the first unit at guard was pretty good for the most part. I thought Nick DeYoung and Connor Colby were pretty good. I thought they showed to be starters. I thought Rusty Feth wasn't bad. I think he's gonna probably ascend in that position too. So he'll be the really good one. I thought Tyler
You think he'll overtake DeYoung?
I think he might be a rotation guy all year, but he'll be a valued guy, in case somebody gets hurt or whatever. I think Tyler Ellsbury really struggled, and Bo Stevens didn't play, and so my anticipation is that Bo Stevens will be probably at least the number 4 guy when he's healthy. And center I thought was okay, but there was no rotation there until the very, very end when Jeremy Chaplin got in, and that's a guy that Kirk has talked up. So we didn't really see anything other than late when Nick DeYoung kicked out to left tackle for Mason Richmond last couple series, and Dejon Parker came in at right tackle. So this week, how'd Dunker look?
Because that's the one we were thinking about, right? That right tackle.
Yeah.
Is it Dejon? Is he healthy enough? Are they committed to put? It seems like they're committed to Jennings right now.
Yeah. I didn't think he played that well, but I think he shows potential. I thought he played okay when it came to pass rush, but he's going to have a different look this week against a better team, against that. So it's like, it's hard to judge, how he did. I'm still wavering on whether that's his position. I think he's probably a better guard than he is a tackle, but I understand, hey, if you can get tackles secured, you feel like you can, not put anybody there at guard, but you feel like that's a position where guys can fall to. I don't know.
I never thought we would experience this 3-year stretch, and I don't want to bury them this year. This is the one game in the third year, with the offensive line like this. I never would have imagined that with Kirk Ferentz.
Yeah, and it's not hard to think, what if they would have secured Joe Alt? What if they would have secured Caden Proctor? If you had Joe Alt there, there's your next All-American.
Proctor at tackle.
Yeah. Sounds like a law firm or a medical firm or something like that. But if you have those
covering some damages for sure.
Yeah. If you had those two and then you had Richmond at guard, then you feel like, okay, then we'll just do whatever we need to do. It's at the other guard spot. Maybe it is Dunker, maybe it's, but I don't know. What did you think in looking at it?
Yeah, just like I said, I don't want to bury the unit this early, but
that's too bad.
Yeah, you got to pick your shots. Call your shot. But I also don't want to bury it. I think there is some potential here. Now it's just a matter of getting the right 5 out there and figuring it out. I wonder if the rotations are going to allow them to get the most out of the position, and it's hard when you're rotating that much. And maybe this is just a continuation of the competition from camp. But with Iowa State this week and Penn State in 2 weeks, I don't know how much time you have to develop during the season. I think you have to make some decisions and maybe live with some growing pains. If it is Dunker, just leave him out there and don't bring Parker in. If you think they need to compete, same at the guard spot. So like you said earlier about the offense in totality, to me, it's you got to show me up front. I got to see consistent offensive line play before I buy in.
This will be a week that I think that'll give us kind of a referendum on Dunker at right tackle. If he can handle the pass rush, because they're going to throw a lot at him.
Yep.
Then I think it's a matter of, okay, if he can handle it, then he'll probably stay there and they won't mess around. But, I'm not so sure that the best 5, I almost said your favorite word there.
Hey, throw it out there.
The best unit wouldn't be, DeYoung at right tackle and maybe Feth in at guard.
Yeah.
That's something that, and maybe Jennings Dunker at guard, something like that. But, I think they got to give it a shot. This is what they've bought into. This is what they've said, we're not moving Jennings around. We're keeping him there. He's got an incredible physical body. He's still only a sophomore. So he's got some upside and some growth there. And then it's just a matter of, I think Feth showed enough where, he's going to be okay, at times. But I this week in particular, I would shorten it down, depending on what you think of Bo Stevens and whether he plays or is capable of playing. I would probably keep it to 6. I would put Feth as maybe your only rotational guy inside, and that's it. I would, unless you think Parker is capable of it, I wouldn't. And even then, I don't know that I would risk that against an Iowa State defense.
Yeah, I think this makes it even more difficult to rotate against a team that gives you so many different looks out of that 3-4 and where guys are coming from. I think some stability there might be the pertinent thing to do.
Yeah. But, I think Rusty is your guy if you can make him your like third interior guy. And again, Bo Stevens started 10 games last year, so you don't want to just flush that down the toilet. But, that's probably where I would lean. And then make D Young kind of your third tackle at this point. If that's right side or left side, he's your versatile guy, and then you can bring in Feth. I think that's probably, that's what I saw the other day. I don't know, against Iowa State that I would throw anybody else in there. I think other than Feth, they struggled a lot.
We'll see. We'll get week 2 of this this look on the offensive line and the approach, and we'll see kind of what they saw in practice. They obviously are playing these guys based on practice, or at least did in that first game. Who earned it in practice, and now they have game film of one game to figure out what they liked and didn't like. From a gambling perspective, Scott, Iowa is favored by 4 at Bet Rivers. And this was as of yesterday afternoon, Wednesday, September the 6th. I don't know if that line has moved at all. Money line was the Hawkeyes minus 190, ISU plus 150, with the total of 36.5. Some trends here for you guys. The total has gone under in 8 of Iowa State's last 9 games. Wow. The total has gone under in 5 of Iowa's last 6 games. So it's screaming at you to take the under. If you're going on trends, the Cyclones are 2-6-1 against the spread in their last 9 games when playing as an underdog. Thought that was interesting. And the Hawkeyes are 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games on the road.
Wow.
So some interesting nuggets there for you guys. And that will lead us into our pick section where Scott beat me again.
Yeah, I had a nice.
Get used to it, folks. This is going to be a weekly occurrence.
I had a nice week, I admit it, and I was 8-3, and you were 6-5, which you're above 500. And when you're picking against the spread, that's always a good number. I mean, anything above is good, and I guess. There's some FCS games, so there aren't any numbers yet for a couple of them, even though there's like 4 or 5 FCS games. So it's kind of a brutal week, if you will, on the slate. But got a couple of Friday night games too, Rob. So that's pretty cool. I'm trying to find one more where there wasn't a number last night, and that's Temple and Rutgers. Which
why wouldn't that have a number? Must be injured.
Yeah, it must be. It's still not listed. So,
where are you looking?
I was at both Vegas Insider. I've been at Bet Rivers. So that one's been that one must have something there. That's okay. But first up, we've got the Battle of Indiana, one of the many of them. Indiana State at Indiana. Indiana is minus 34.5, Rob, at home on a Friday night.
I don't know anything about Indiana State at all. I know Rick Keller coached there.
Yeah.
Larry Bird played there.
Yeah. And
what else? What other
Greg
Lansing?
Lansing, he was there. Jake Kelly transferred
there. Yep.
transferred.
Boyle.
Yeah.
Did Ryan Boyle go to Indiana State from
Yes,
Iowa?
he did. Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking about
Bunch of useless information here.
still
Has no impact on me delaying picking this game. I'll take Indiana.
yeah. All right. I will as well. I think Indiana, and they played well defensively last week against what was it, 20-3 or 23-3 against Ohio State. So
that's Tom Allen's bread and butter, right? Defense is his thing. So if they're going to be any better this year, which I question, it'll be on that side of the ball.
Absolutely. Now, here's a really fascinating game, Rob, and one of the better ones of the week for the Big Ten at Friday night. Illinois at Kansas, -3. The over-under is 58.5. Wow. So I saw Illinois play last week, and they barely beat Toledo. I knew Toledo was a pretty tough team, and they should have won, frankly. I'm surprised they didn't. But for whatever reason, I think Bielema kind of gathers it. I think, going on the road, 58, -3.
-3?
Yeah.
Illinois is favored?
No, Kansas is favored.
Okay. That's right. I was figuring that.
I think this could be a really tough game because Kansas actually went to a bowl last year, as did, of course, Illinois. But I'm going to go with the mighty Illini on the road in Lawrence. I would, wonder if Bill Self will go out and flip the coin or whatever. But that's what I'll go with.
I'm with you. I'm going to go with Illinois. I'm kind of on the Illinois train this year. I watched that game as well against Toledo. Very uninspiring offensive effort from Illinois, but I think Illinois is still pretty solid defensively and will ride that to victory in
Lawrence. So, okay, this is to me the most fascinating game of the week. It may not be the best game, but it's most fascinating. And that's Nebraska at Colorado. Colorado, the swing on the line going from -8 Nebraska to now -3.5 for Colorado, and 59.5 being the number. It's crazy. I'm going to do it second week in a row. I'm going to take the Huskers to cover, or to give me the 3.5 in the Huskers. I don't know what to think of Colorado beating TCU. TCU was a lot different team than it was last year. How do they respond to that level of success with Dion? I'm going to still take. I'm going to take the Huskers on the road.
Prime time. Give me Colorado without question on this one. I'm not taking that hook. I don't like that hook, but I did watch Nebraska and Minnesota. Nebraska still just, I don't see it with them. And if it was in Lincoln, I certainly would take Nebraska. But I think Colorado, first home game for Dion, crowd's going to be into it. I think this is going to be a tough spot for Nebraska. So give me the Buffs.
All right. Yeah. Well, Travis Hunter certainly had a game last week, and
great player. Incredible player.
Yeah. It's amazing that, he was able to coax him to Jackson State to begin with. And then of course, Colorado, and he's going to be there one more year after this, but Youngstown boys at Ohio State, the number is 41.5. I don't think we'll see a replication of last week's offense. I'm going to go with Ohio State.
I'm with you. I hate throwing big numbers like that, but hard for me to believe that Ohio State's offense is going to struggle for 2 weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've just seen this team too many times. This is like the week where Kyle McCord will go out and throw 6 touchdowns or something, and they'll win decisively.
They have pretty good receivers.
Yeah. There is no line on this game, so I guess it's kind of like the free space and the Monopoly. Delaware at Penn State. What do you want to do? You want to just Delaware. We'll just pick the.
Yeah, we can just, I don't know. Do you want to make up a number?
No.
Let's just punt.
Yeah. Let's just
Penn
call
State's going to win. Whatever the number is, they'll probably cover if a number does come out.
Right. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to say Penn State, and just, if it's 5, great. If it's 45, all right. Purdue at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech -3 and 46.5. I'm going to go with the Boilers. Boiler up. I know last week they lost a close, tough one to Fresno State. Virginia Tech's been, they've got Enter Sandman, but after that, they don't have a whole lot more.
No, this is a tough game. This is one of the tougher games, and I would not actually bet real money on this game because I just have no feel for it. Purdue did not look good. Fresno State's a good team, though. How much of it was Purdue? How much of it was Fresno State? Virginia Tech stinks, but it's a road trip. I'm going to take the Hokies.
Okay. Gobble, gobble, gobble. All right. All right. Here is one of our bigger lines of the week, and that is UNLV at Michigan -37. This is the second straight week that Michigan doesn't have its head coach, Jim Harbaugh, and they're doing the free Harbaugh which I thought was a little silly. I mean, it's not like
the poor guy. I feel awful for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough life.
You think of all the things you could point to the ceiling about and all that, or the sky. I think Jim Harbaugh is not the one that I would do that.
Does not have the same ring as free Johnny Jacuzzi.
Well, you think about like somebody who died or somebody's, and it's like
somebody wrongly accused of a crime or something like that.
Yeah.
And you've got this guy who broke NCAA rules, lied, and got suspended.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, even like with Noah Shannon, I could see like Iowa doing a tribute to, free Shanzo. And that one would have more value to me than free Harbaugh.
The guy making $10 million a year.
Yeah, I know. And he's suspended for 3 games. But that said, I'm going to go with Michigan at cover. Last week they didn't, but no. I'm going to go with them anyway.
I think so too. I think they're going to run the football down the Rebels' throats.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to look like Vicksburg all over again. This one doesn't have a line yet either. Richmond at Michigan State. How do you want to play this one?
Well, you can just do it like Penn State. Michigan State's going to win.
Okay. We're just going to call these free spaces because in some ways, this one probably more than the other one. I would probably need to look at the number, just as because
Richmond's a pretty good FCS team. They're not terrible.
Yeah. And Michigan State's so inconsistent that, that things can happen. Here's a really fascinating one to me, and that's UTEP at Northwestern. Northwestern is favored 1.5 points. The over-under is 38.5, so it's not expected to be a game that anybody would want to watch in person or on TV. I'm going to say this is their one win of the year. I'm going to go give me the Wildcats, and throw the 1.5.
Yep, I'm with you. I won't go into I won't break this down. It's not a football game you want to watch. Put it that way.
Yeah. Charlotte at Maryland. This is the NBC game. And this was the week. I tell you what, back in the spring, Stuart Mandel and I, we went through trying to do this guessing game on which games are going to appear on what networks for the first 3 weeks. And when we got to the Big Ten schedule, we're like, what are they going to do? I mean, because like any of the good games are on the road, which means it's the other team's jurisdiction for TV. And so this one got relegated to NBC, just like UNLV and Michigan are in CBS.
Is this Biff Poggi?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So back to his home area.
Yeah, Maryland.
Maryland. That's where he cut his teeth in the high school ranks there.
Yeah, exactly. So, he's back home, and I wonder whatever happened to his son. He's
in a band.
Is he really?
Yeah. He plays rock music. I think he plays guitar.
Okay. Well, that's pretty awesome.
Jim
Poggi, yeah, because he was a Rhabdo guy, if I recall.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, because Jim was one of the guys who stood up because they were on that cruise or whatever. So I'm going to still take Maryland. I know that's
the number?
24.5, 51.5. I'm going to take the Terrapins. They got a passing offense. Charlotte won its opener. Didn't look necessarily impressive doing it, but they still won.
Yeah, I'll take the Terps as well in this one.
Okay. Eastern Michigan at Minnesota, minus 20.5 for the Mighty Gophers. I'm taking the Gophers.
I will too. Eastern Michigan's tricky, but I will still take Minnesota.
Fighting Flex. This one does not have a number. We can't figure out why. Temple at Rutgers. It's on BTN Saturday night. So when you're driving back from Ames, you'll be like, yeah, I go watch this, right? Just kidding. I'm sure Texas and Alabama probably will. I'm going to go with Rutgers. So they'll be a third of the way towards a bowl game.
Yep. I'll take, give me the Knights.
And this one's fascinating for a lot of reasons. Wisconsin at Wazoo, Washington State. Wisconsin last year has lost at home to Wazoo, but they're a 6-point favorite on the road at Pullman. 59 is the over/under. I think I'm going to go with Whiskey. They played okay the other day, but I think that they're going to be able to pull this one out.
I agree. That not always the easiest play there.
No.
To play in Pullman. It can get a little crazy there, but it'll be a good environment. But I think Wisconsin prevails.
This is what their last year is, a Power 5 program, which kind of stinks for them. It's really unfortunate, but they might be the most remote of the Power 5 schools. If you think about, because maybe you could throw Colorado in there, but still, it's Colorado is actually kind of densely populated in that part of the state. So finally, the one we're going to be at, -4 is the number currently, 36.5. I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be competitive, but I also think that when I look at Iowa State's offense, I just wonder, are you going to be able to do much of anything against Iowa? It's almost like Iowa has to make mistakes for Iowa State to win. And it's possible. But I think Iowa is the better team, the more complete team. Even though we see their flaws, everybody sees their flaws. I don't think enough has been discussed about Iowa State's flaws. And they're obvious and they're deep. So I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes at -4. But I would also take the under, like Aaron Blom would.
Yeah, and Arlen Bruce. I have this Iowa winning 17-13, so right on the number. I think it's a good line. I do. I think it's a number that makes it a little bit more challenging. The best bet, I think, I'm with you, is the under. Mm-hmm. But having to make a pick on this, I will take the Hawkeyes to cover the 4.
Okay. See, what'll happen, Rob, is it'll be like 5 minutes left in the game. It'll be 17-6. Iowa State will score a touchdown to cut it to 17-12, and then they'll go for 2. And then there will be maybe 1 million people that will be very, very interested in what happens in that 2-point conversion.
Hopefully it isn't any of the student athletes.
All of a sudden you start seeing, like Iowa's offensive players throwing their helmets if they get it, damn, or if they don't, that'd be even worse. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're past that now, past that stage, and we'll see. We'll see if these investigations crop up anywhere else in the country, or if this state remains an isolated incident. I'm interested to see that. I've been waiting to see if one of those stories kind of leaks out where this is happening somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's, and yesterday there were 5 guilty pleas, 3 at Iowa State and 2 in Iowa.
Update the folks on that. That's probably something we should have put out earlier.
Yeah, they all of them were they pled down, which is almost you would have bet on. So they all bet they all pleaded down to gambling underage, and so they all got $645 fines. Now Hunter Deckers and Hunter Deckers, and there was one other one who had to admit that they bet on their team. And so that's going to be significant for them as far as what happens in their next step, even though Hunter Deckers is still listed on the team. Then you had Jake Remsburg, who admitted he bet on he bet on like 6 NCAA games, but it didn't have anything to do with Iowa State. So he's in the clear. Oh, Dodge Sauser. He was the other one, but he was off the team anyway. But he bet on 4 Iowa State games that he did not play in, is what his official plea was. At Iowa, Aaron Blum admitted that he bet on an NCAA game, but not an Iowa game. That was not his admission. And then the other one was Gary Stevenson, who admitted he bet on, I think it was Kansas TCU, so basketball. So that's kind of the rundown for now. A couple of interesting side notes, I think. Uwazurike, the defensive lineman who was with the Denver Broncos, also, and Panero Johnson, a wrestler, got tacked on identity theft charges. And both of them, and Panero Johnson's is over $1,500. So it's a Class D felony where he's at right now. So that's that. And then on the Iowa side, Arlen Bruce, Reggie Bracey, I think Aaron Eulis all demanded a jury trial. And on the Iowa State side, Jarrell Brock did as well, and a couple others. So it's it's coming to a head here. And I think if you're looking at that's the only way that some of these athletes can ever play again. Right.
You may as well take your shot.
Yeah. So, whether or not they're guilty or not, that'll be fascinating. But, Isaiah Lee, I think, was another one who wanted a trial because otherwise they'll never play football again at collegiate level.
So is it Jack Johnson and Aaron Bloom are off the roster now?
Yeah. They're no longer listed on the roster. So, which you got to expect that, but Kirk mentioned you bet on Iowa, you're done, kind of thing. And I think that makes sense. Although they were there earlier in the year, but I think once this kind of came down, then that was it.
And we got nothing on the Iowa wrestlers yet publicly, right?
Nothing publicly, but we've seen the names out there, 6, and a lot of them are season long. So, I don't know how long they can keep that under wraps. I think it's in some ways this is kind of silly. And I mentioned it to an attorney one day last week about FERPA. I'm like, I'm not so sure this is a FERPA situation. And they kind of agreed with me on that. But, as we saw, A plus 1 equals 2. Jamari Harris is out for another game. Chris Reams was walking around with Noah Shannon with a pass, not anything else. So take that for what it's worth.
We're getting some resolution here after months of just being in a holding pattern, which is good. And
yeah.
Then we'll see. I'm sure, you get to wrestling season, you got some explaining to do, obviously.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much can be said publicly, but when the guys aren't wrestling and they're not hurt, something's up.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're not marching out Tony Cassiope, and among the others, because there's some really good wrestlers there who went to nationals and, who know the coaches very, 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 very well. when they're not in the lineup, you're going to have to ask why. And you can't say, I don't know, for all season. So let's just,
we roll on. We roll on as the information rolls in very slowly.
Yes.
But we'll get there. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this episode of the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to our sponsors. And Scott and I will be back next Thursday to recap the Cy-Hawk game a little bit and then look ahead to Western Michigan. So have a great weekend. Behave yourselves if you're going to Ames this weekend. Stay out of trouble. And we will talk to you next week. Scott, say goodbye.